Hi, I wanted to make a quick video to show you how to fit the Oxford Hotgrips to a Yamaha MT07. And actually, I don't think it's a particularly good kit for this bike because the controller really doesn't fit at all and there's no bracket in the kit included to fit to this bike. Okay, so this is where we get to the really negative part about these Oxford Hotgrips, and that is there's really nowhere to put this controller unless you fancy sticking it right over the top of your Speedo. You either need to glue it to a flat surface, well, good luck finding one of those, or use the mounting bracket supplied. But with the mounting bracket, they assume that you've got a couple of nice bolts on your handlebars already that you can use to mount it to. So for example, over on my brake lever, I do indeed have a couple of bolts, but I don't want this on my throttle and brake side, and you'd have to bend the bracket round to do it. Frankly, there's not a lot of space there. It would be okay, but not great. I want it on my clutch hand so I can control it without taking my hand off. But there's nowhere to do it here, there's no way of attaching it, and while Oxford do include a couple of longer bolts for you to use with this, there's no bracket at the back, so you can't attach it to anything. They include no nuts, so there's nothing to actually bolt the bracket to, so you're on your own. It basically makes the kit entirely unsuitable for fitting to this bike, and I guess any other bike which is similar, which doesn't have exactly what Oxford expects you to have. So for me to get around this, I ended up making the back end of a bracket using something I found in the shed that looks like it's off an old lock, and I've just bent it a little bit so it's about the right size and shape. Managed to find a couple of nuts, far from ideal. They're not captive like shake-proof ones, they're square, but I guess I'll have to make do because Oxford didn't supply anything else. So let's see how we get on. Okay, so that's the bracket fitted. To be honest, it was a pain. I've tried to get a piece of rubber behind it. A piece of old biking tube would be ideal. I couldn't find one, so ended up chopping up a spare belt for our Hoover. I've also damaged the handlebars a little bit doing it. Maybe you'll be more careful. But again, really frustrating that Oxford don't provide any sort of bracket to help you fit it. You're also going to need to put some thread lock stuff on there to stop these coming loose. I actually don't have any of that either. So I guess for now use a bit of nail varnish or something, but just gives you an idea of this is really not a well thought out kit for this particular bike. Okay, so there it is. I've now fitted the controller and it's okay. It's not the prettiest job in the world. It does the job. However, the only thing is I highly recommend that you stick and screw the controller to the bracket before you mount it, because I can't actually get to one of the screws now to do it up. So just a quick update on the video. It has been suggested that I could have used this bottom bolt here on the bracket for the controller and then bent the bracket back and maybe zip tied it around here using one of the holes in the bracket. Yeah, I guess it would have been okay. I don't think it would have sat brilliantly against there. It probably would have been at a little bit of a steep angle, but it may have been better than this bracket arrangement. Okay, so now let's just look at the standard jobs that you need to do to fit these grips, which hopefully will go a little bit more smoothly and should be about the same on any bike. So on the MT07 you need to get access to the battery, and you do that by undoing these two Allen bolts which hold the seat down, and then you can remove the seat by sliding it back. If you take off the pillion seat, you'll find there's a couple of Allen keys underneath the pillion seat which will enable you to unbolt the main seat itself, and then you can see you have access to the two battery terminals. Now to run the cables neatly, you really need to take off the fairings from the side of the bike. I don't think there's any other easy way to get it through. So I'm just pointing out the main bolts here. The large one on the black on this bike, you've got one at the top on the red piece. There's another one just by the saddle. And then also you need to take off this central cover from the top of the fuel tank, which has a single bolt and then slides backwards. And under there you'll find two more bolts here and here, and a little clip which will enable you to take off the fairing. Just be careful because it is also attached to some of the plastic grab rails at the back of the bike, so you either need to take those off as well or somehow support the fairing so it doesn't break. As you can see there's a grommet which is part of how the side panel is held on. Just make sure when you put the bike back together that these are seated properly, otherwise you'll push it through and lose it, or end up with a rattling panel. So with a bit of fiddling you should be able to push that back into place Make sure these are all seated well, ready for your panels to go back together and your fairing to be reattached to the bike properly. So there we go, that's the grommet properly seated, ready for the cover to go back on the side. There are two other grommets. You can find them just by looking down the frame. One of them actually we just saw there on the end of the plastic panels. The grommet's in the plastic itself, you can see it there. And then where you've got that little spike poking out, that also goes into a grommet, which is a little bit harder to see. I'll point it out here. It's at the top, just there in the frame. And you can see that one is seated nicely. So when you push the covers back on, it should nicely fit against those and be held quite tightly. Okay, so this is the positive ready to go to the positive of the battery, and the negative here, and the fuse that they come with is just tucked in there in case we should need it. And I've run the cable just under here, and then I've run it basically alongside this one, which goes under the fuel tank and pops out the front alongside all these other cables. It's this one here. So removing the old grips should be pretty easy if you've got bar ends on, weights on. Rip those off. They normally have cover like this, under which you find a large nut like that, and it just pop off. Now, to get the grips off themselves, these are going to be glued on to your bike, so it's incredibly highly unlikely you're going to be able to just slide it off. So you have to cut them off. So this isn't too bad, just run a Stanley knife down the grip and you should find you can obviously peel it off. Okay, so just cut the very end of it off, and there we have it. So now I've still got that little kind of washer spacer, so I'm just going to do a dry fit first, check it all fits okay. So that is a pretty tight fit in there actually. Struggling to move it, so I'm going to push that on a little bit firmly, check it all lines up with the bar end, and then I'll take it off to glue it. There we go. So having put this grip all the way on, you can see it is actually a tiny bit long. So I'm going to start here and just try chewing the very end off the grip and see how that looks. Okay, I'm happy with that. I've taken off a little bit much, if anything, but it isn't catching now, which it was before. The only other thing to watch is to make sure when your throttle's applied that that isn't going to get in the way of the brake. I'm actually clear of it there with the brake fully applied, so we're good. Make sure you get it at the right sort of angle. Probably if you can see the word Oxford, then that probably means you're in reasonable shape. So about there, grips are on, cables are on, the bracket's on, so you connect up everything and do something with the cables. Okay, so just connected up the cables, dead easy, plug them in, screw them up. I've got loads and loads of slack cable here, maybe you could do something better with it. I've used the existing zip ties just to keep it with the other cables, again making sure it's not too tight, and we've got a decent run on the throttle side. Okay, so what I've ended up doing is running all the cables down through here and here, which is a pain, and they ping out the bottom here, and I've taken the right hand one across under here as well. It's about as long as they are, so I've connected them there. They are, stuck a zip tie around them. I'm just going to shove them up under the tank in here, so they're well out the way. So there's the final shot with the cable zip tied up. You probably can't see it too well, tucked in there. They're just about clear of anything important. So that's it. If you find a better way of mounting the bracket, please let me know.